We're about 70 miles southwest of New Orleans. It's not another country, it's in the United States. As you're riding down the road, it's marsh and broken up marsh and water, and then all of a sudden Port Fourchon pops up, and it's 1,700 acres of, about $2 billion of investment in the ground to service the oil and gas industry. There's probably been about $300 million worth of investment in coastal protection and restoration in this general area, in the Port Fourchon area, and this footprint.
We found that if something happened, if there was a hurricane, if there was some great flood for some reason that the trucks could not get to Port Fourchon. I mean, if this is closed for 3 weeks, I mean, we estimated that the United States will take a hit of about 65,000 jobs temporarily.
Look, we power this nation. We feed this nation. We provide all sorts of commerce for this nation. The Mississippi River system connects to 35 states. You add the rail lines in there, it connects to even more. You can't replicate what we do and have here anywhere else. You really can't. We have such an incredible just kind of natural advantage or strategic asset here. 65% of the grains from the Midwest, 65% of all those farms, they come down here and depend upon our port system to get them out to market.
If this road is shut down and there's no access to the port shut down, or the section that's no longer elevated is shut down, it's a $22 million impact to the national economy.
Port Fourchon is one of the most really important ports in the country. At this point, 100% of all the offshore oil and gas in the Gulf of Mexico is serviced out of Port Fourchon.
People think, southern Louisiana, Cajun country, fishermen and hunters. Well, yeah, they're fishermen and hunters, but that's oil country and has been for 40 or 50 years.
If you count offshore, we're the number 2 producer of oil behind Texas, and probably now the number 4 producer of natural gas.
90 to 100% of all of our offshore oil and gas industry is serviced out of Port Fourchon. So that's a critical piece of infrastructure for the whole United States.
You think about transportation, energy production, food production, fiber production, all of those important things. Many of them occur here in coastal Louisiana. Obviously, the mouth of the Mississippi River, by which much of the bulk cargo in the entire United States is transported, has to pass through coastal Louisiana.
Not only the agricultural industry, but the petrochemical industry, as well as other industries, rely upon the Mississippi River. They need to know that they can get the ships into the Mississippi River from the Gulf of Mexico and then up and down the river reliably every day, every year.
With a degraded ecosystem, that navigation lifeline is more vulnerable than it otherwise would be.
So it really is much more than just, sorry about those people that are losing their home or becoming more susceptible to flooding. This is a national issue from a monetary perspective, from a trade perspective, from an energy perspective, from a food perspective.
The economic value of our coast to the fisheries, the oil and gas industry, is so major that if we continue to lose wetlands at the rate we are and at the rate they're projected to be lost, we're really facing huge economic impacts.
If you have an instant national disaster, there's 2 things going to happen. First of all, you're going to fall off the cliff. You're going to have a shortage of oil, which means you're going to have a price increase, which means you're going to have a gasoline price increase.
Immediately following Hurricanes Katrina and Rita, gas prices that you or I would pay to fill our car up spiked nationwide. So that's a real tangible example of why the country needs a healthy, resilient coastal Louisiana.
You have the oil that's coming from the Gulf of Mexico, which is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 20% of the oil that we produce. But then you also have the only port in the United States that can handle very large crude carriers or ultra-large crude carriers.
So obviously Port Fourchon's a critical piece of the nation's oil and gas economy. So the state heavily invested in restoring or fortifying some of these barrier islands right in front of here. And so many of the communities and the people that live there rely upon, the oil and gas industry as well as the fisheries. The Louisiana coast is a working coast because of the resources.
So there's a substantial amount of money that's being put into it. The BP oil spill, we expect somewhere around $10 billion will be invested here in South Louisiana. Most of the work that's been done in the coastal area by the state has been funded by the oil and gas companies. Coastal land in Louisiana is about 82% privately owned, the majority by these same companies. So when the land erodes, they're the ones that are losing the asset.
This little barrier, this mud barrier that you see is a barrier that was built there by the Port Commission because we're going to be pumping more material in there. And actually all of that water you see behind that barrier is going to be elevated and turned into marsh. We've rebuilt 1,000 acres to the north of the port, as well as recreated a ridge to kind of help build up the landscape, but it's turned into storm protection. Hopefully in the nearer term we get approved to go to 50 feet and we can dredge a slip here, and this would be a deep water rig repair and refurbishment facility. You have to look at it as a 50-year project. In a sediment-starved area, it's a recurring source of sediment over the next 50 years that we can utilize to benefit our community and the landscape here.
When you dredge to 50 feet, there's going to be millions and millions of cubic yards of material, which in that sediment-starved system is a gold mine. We're going to create new ridges and terraces, wetlands, which would be good for the environment, community resilience benefits, flood risk reduction, etc.
As we look for development in the port towards the future, and we look at dredging our channels to deeper drafts and creating millions and millions of cubic yards of material, it's important for us to utilize all that material that we dredge in a beneficial way.
So we're using our modeling and our analysis to figure out, all right, where do we put that material to protect critical infrastructure?
You can think of Louisiana as being that canary in the coal mine in terms of the issues we're facing, in terms of our infrastructure, our economy, the protection of our coastal communities and industries. We're seeing those in an accelerated pace relative to a lot of places around the country and the world.
So it's really, we think, an opportunity where everybody can be on the side of the angels. We've got oil and gas and environmentalists, community leaders, port, and I think it's a perfect example of how in this geography, and in so many coastal geographies, the environment and the economy are intrinsically connected.
Hey NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.